The stars above Kaelri's planet shimmered like distant fires, their light reflecting in her bright eyes. She had always been taught that the Elders' laws were absolute. No human could ever set foot on their world, for humanity's history had shown a dangerous propensity for violence and defiance. The message was clear: humans were a threat. Their wars, their conquests, their rebellion, those were the core of their nature. It was not an idle fear, it was a fundamental truth. At least, that was what Kaelri had been taught. But as she sat alone in the dense forest, staring at the twisted metal of the ship that had crashed mere hours ago, doubt began to gnaw at her. The ship was unlike any of the sleek, sophisticated vessels used by the Elders. It was crude, almost primitive by their standards, but something about it sparked curiosity in Kaelri. She wasn't supposed to be here. No one was supposed to have seen this crash. The law was clear: no contact with humans. Ever. But this wasn't just a law, it was a commandment, ingrained in every child's mind from birth. To break it was unthinkable. As she crouched closer to the wreckage, the faint groans of the twisted metal stirred her, and she gasped as she saw a figure moving within the wreckage. A man. His uniform was torn, stained with the marks of battle. He was human. Instinctively, she hesitated. The teachings she had absorbed her entire life screamed at her to turn back, to report this to the Elders. But something in his eyes, pained yet defiant, called to her. She couldn't explain it. She wasn't sure if it was curiosity, compassion, or something deeper. Against her better judgment, Kaelri approached. The man, he was older than she expected, his face lined with years of hard living, but his eyes were bright. Almost too bright. He wasn't entirely unconscious, but he was far from able to defend himself. She knelt beside him, brushing the debris from his face, careful not to cut herself on the sharp edges. His breath was shallow. He had no more fight left in him. He was a human, yes, but he was also helpless. "Stay with me," she whispered, though she had no idea if he could hear her. His lips parted as though trying to speak, but all that came out was a strained groan. Kaelri's heart beat faster. She couldn't leave him. She had to help him. The laws of her people no longer seemed relevant. Without a second thought, she carefully lifted the man onto her back, making sure to avoid further injury. The weight of him was unexpected, but she managed, carrying him through the dense forest towards the only place she knew where she could hide him. Her training might have prepared her to fight, physically and mentally, but nothing could have prepared her for the emotions racing through her as she made her way deeper into the woods. She had no clear plan, but instinct guided her. There was an abandoned watchtower on the outskirts of the military training grounds. It was a relic from an ancient war, long since forgotten, but it would be a safe place. The thought of bringing a human there was terrifying, yet there was a strange thrill in the idea. She wasn't sure what it meant, but her actions were no longer defined by the laws that governed her society. Hours later, Kaelri settled the human in the abandoned tower, making sure he was comfortable. He was still unconscious, but his breathing was steady. She didn't know how much time they had before someone would realize he was missing, before they started looking for him. But for now, he was safe. The world outside the tower was silent, save for the occasional rustle of the wind through the trees. Kaelri sat beside him, keeping a watchful eye on the entrance, but her thoughts were elsewhere. She had taken the first step into the unknown, and there was no turning back now. The man's eyes fluttered open, and Kaelri was on her feet in an instant. He looked around, confused, disoriented. His hand moved to his chest as though trying to steady himself, but he froze when his gaze landed on her. He was wary. She could see it in the tightness of his posture, the way he tensed, ready to fight. "Where am I?" His voice was hoarse, weak, but clear enough. His accent was thick, foreign. "Human. You're safe," Kaelri replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. She had no idea how to explain this, how to answer his unasked questions. But for now, safety was all she could offer him. The man's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, Kaelri thought he might try to escape. But then, he simply nodded and slumped back against the floor, his breath coming in ragged gasps. She could see the pain in his eyes, the toll the crash had taken on him. He wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. "My name is Marcus," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not from here." Where are you from?" "I'm Kaori. I'm from here, this planet." Marcus tried to sit up but winced in pain, a sound of frustration escaping him. Kaori watched him carefully, noting the weariness in his expression. He was a soldier, she realized, just like the warriors who had trained beside her. He was not the average civilian. This man had fought. He understood war, but there was more to him than that. She could tell he wasn't one to ask for help. His pride, his resilience, shone through despite his weakened state. It was in the way his jaw set and his eyes remained defiant, even as his body betrayed him. "You're human," Kaori said softly, more to herself than to him. "Yes," he replied, his voice low. "I'm human." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. She had read about humans in history, learned about their wars, their conquests, their rebellions. Yet here, in front of her, was a man who seemed different. There was a strength in him, yes, but also something more. His resilience wasn't just about survival. It was something deeper, something that resonated with her. "You're not like the stories," Kaori murmured, more out of wonder than judgment. Marcus let out a small, bitter laugh. "I'm not like the stories you've been told. But trust me, I've seen enough to know what we're capable of." Her heart skipped a beat at his words. "And what is that?" she asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. "Surviving," Marcus said simply. "We're good at surviving. And when the time comes, we fight. Because that's what we do." Kaori's mind raced. The teachings of the elders told her that humanity was a threat to peace, to the delicate balance her world had maintained for centuries. But Marcus's words made her question everything she had been told. What if their strength wasn't in their violence, but in their ability to resist, to survive against all odds? A part of her wanted to argue, to dismiss his words, but another part, the part that had carried him to safety, knew that there was truth in what he said. Humans had endured, had fought against impossible odds. They weren't just warriors, they were survivors. For the first time, Kaori wondered if the fear the elders had of humans wasn't because of their violence, but because of something far more dangerous, their ability to inspire defiance. Kaori sat at the edge of the tower, watching the horizon as the first light of dawn touched the sky. The human, Marcus, was still unconscious. His breath steady but shallow, his body battered by the crash. Despite the laws, despite the danger, Kaori had brought him here. She couldn't explain why, but something about the way he fought to survive spoke to her. It was unlike anything she had ever seen among her people. She stood up, pacing the small room, trying to sort through her thoughts. The elders had been clear: no interaction with humans. Their history was full of wars, destruction, and chaos. The humans had a gift for making things burn, for rising up and fighting when peace was no longer an option. It wasn't that they sought violence, it was that they wouldn't bow down to tyranny, no matter the cost. The elders feared this about them, and Kaori had always agreed. Until now. Marcus stirred, groaning softly. She turned to him. His eyes opened slowly, focusing on her. For a moment he didn't speak. He just looked at her, as if trying to figure out if she was real. The silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable. "You saved me," Marcus said finally, his voice rough from the strain of the crash. "I couldn't leave you to die," Kaori replied quietly. She wasn't sure why she said it, but it was true. "You're different." He gave a weak smile, his eyes reflecting a sadness that Kaori couldn't quite understand. "All humans are different," he said. "But if you're asking if I'm like the stories, the ones they tell you about us, the wars, the destruction, the chaos, then yes, I guess I am. But you've only seen one side of it." Kaori wasn't sure what to say. She had been taught that humanity was a force of destruction. Yet here he was, a living human, not a monster or a warrior bent on bloodshed, but a survivor. I don't understand, she murmured. You don't have to, Marcus said, his voice growing stronger. You just have to understand that we don't start the wars, but we sure as hell know how to fight them. Kaori turned her gaze to the window. The vast, peaceful world outside her tower now felt somehow smaller, more fragile. The thought of her society, of the elders who maintained the peace at all costs, seemed almost naive. They feared humans because humans could fight, yes. But there was something else. Something they didn't understand. Humanity's ability to endure, to resist, to inspire change. If the elders feared anything, it wasn't violence, it was that very resilience. She shook her head, trying to push the thoughts away. They couldn't afford to think like this. The law was clear, and her training had always been in service of that law. But every time she looked at Marcus, she felt her convictions weaken. The stories she had been taught were not the whole truth. There had to be more. Kaori's gaze returned to Marcus, who was watching her carefully, almost as if waiting for her to make up her mind. The weight of her decision pressed down on her. She knew what the consequences would be if anyone found out about him, about her actions. The elders would not forgive this betrayal. There would be no second chances. I have to go back, she said finally, her voice filled with resolve. I can't keep you here. It's too dangerous. Marcus looked at her, his expression softening. And if you go back, what then? What happens to you? I'll be exiled. And you'll be taken by the elders, Kaori replied, her tone heavy. The thought of Marcus being captured, experimented on, or worse made her stomach turn. She couldn't let that happen. You don't have to go back, Marcus said. You've already made your choice by saving me. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Kaori's heart skipped a beat. The weight of his words settled over her, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel alone. She had always followed the rules, always adhered to the elders' commands. But here, in the face of this human, she felt like she was standing on the edge of something bigger, something that was hers to shape. I can't do it, she whispered. I can't defy them. You already did, Marcus replied, his voice firm. And I'm here because you did. She clenched her fists, torn between the law she had always upheld and the truth she was beginning to see. The law said no. It said humans were to be feared, rejected, eradicated if necessary. But what if the law was wrong? What if the real danger wasn't the humans, but the fear they provoked in those who had never understood them? Kaori stood still, silent, her mind racing. It was true that humans had a history of rebellion, of rising against oppressive forces. But they didn't do so because they craved destruction, they did it because they believed in freedom. And that belief, that defiance, was what terrified the elders. Kaori realized now that their true fear wasn't about bloodshed. It was about the power humans had to inspire resistance, to awaken something within others that couldn't be controlled. I can't just walk away, Kaori said, the decision solidifying within her. I can't go back to the elders and pretend everything is fine. I won't let them hurt you, or anyone else. Marcus met her gaze, his eyes filled with understanding and something more. Gratitude. Hope. He wasn't the only one who had been fighting for survival. Kaori had been fighting, too, just in a different way. We don't have to fight alone, Marcus said softly. If we stand together, we can change this. For a moment, Kaori saw a future that had once been impossible. A future where she didn't have to follow the rules set by those who ruled her world, where she could make her own choices, where she could choose to protect those who needed it most. She felt something stir within her, a sense of purpose, a fire that had been smoldering under the surface for far too long. It was time to stop hiding. It was time to make a stand. I won't let them take you, she said, her voice low but unwavering. We fight for something better. Marcus nodded, a small smile crossing his face. Then let's make sure they never forget who we are. Kaori took a deep breath. The future was uncertain, but in that moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was the choice she had made, to fight, to resist, and to protect. The rest would follow. Together, they would find a way. The elders were not forgiving. Kaori knew that better than anyone. They had been the ones who had shaped her life, had molded her into the warrior she was today. Their laws were not just rules, they were absolute, unbreakable truths. And one of the most sacred was the prohibition of human contact. No human could be allowed to live. The threat they posed to their society was too great, too dangerous. But Kaori had broken that law. She had saved Marcus, and now, she had no idea what would happen next. She had expected them to come for her immediately, but the elders were patient. They would wait. And when the time came, they would strike. She had prepared herself for exile, for punishment. What she had not prepared for was the cold, calculating eyes of the elders as they summoned her to the council chamber. There was no emotion in their faces, no anger, no fear, just the stark, unyielding certainty of authority. When they spoke, their words were final. "You have broken the law, Kaori. You have defied the will of the elders. For this, you will be exiled to the barren moon. Your actions will not be tolerated." Kaori stood tall, her heart racing, but her voice steady. "I did what was right. You have no understanding of what you've done." The elder's voice was like ice, cold and absolute. "Your actions have endangered us all. The human you saved is a threat. His kind always are." "I don't believe that," Kaori said, her voice stronger now. "Humans are not the monsters you think they are. They are survivors. They fight because they have no choice. You don't understand them, you fear them." "We fear nothing," the elder replied, the corners of their mouth twitching slightly in disdain. "You are too young to see the full picture. We have watched them for centuries, and we know what they are capable of. What they can do to destroy everything we've built." Kaori shook her head. "No, you fear them because they can fight back. They won't bend to your will. They're not like us, they don't follow rules just because you say so. But that doesn't make them evil. It makes them powerful. And that power is what you can't control." The elders exchanged glances, their expression unreadable. "Your punishment has been decided. You will be exiled. You will be sent to the barren moon where you will live out your days in isolation." Kaori swallowed hard, but she didn't look away. She had known this would happen. It was the price of defying the elders. It wasn't just about saving Marcus. It was about questioning everything she had been taught, about seeing through the lies they had told her whole life. And now, she had to face the consequences. "I'll go," she said quietly, but with a resolve that surprised even her. "But not alone." The elder's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "I won't leave him here," Kaori said, her gaze turning toward the chamber doors where Marcus was being held. "He's a human, yes, but he deserves better than what you planned for him. You are not in a position to make demands," the elder snapped. "I'm not demanding," Kaori said, her voice low but unwavering. "I'm telling you that you won't get him without a fight. I won't let you hurt him. I've already made that choice." The elders were silent for a moment, their faces unreadable. Then, one of them spoke, their voice carrying the weight of centuries of power. "You are a traitor, Kaori. You will be punished accordingly." "I don't care," Kaori replied. "I would rather be exiled than live in a world where people are punished for doing what's right." The elders seemed to take this in, their cold gaze never leaving her. They weren't just angry, they were calculating. They had dealt with defiance before, but this was different. Kaori wasn't afraid. She wasn't going to beg for forgiveness. And that scared them more than any rebellion ever could. "You are sentenced to exile. You will be sent to the barren moon, along with your human companion. You will be left to fend for yourselves." Kaori's heart skipped a beat. Her thoughts immediately went to Marcus. He would be coming with her. She would not leave him behind. They had both made their choices. And now, together, they would face whatever came next. "Then we leave," Kaori said firmly. "And when we do, we take everything you've built with us." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. The elders knew what she meant. This was not just about exile. This was not just about punishment. This was about defiance. About resistance. And for the first time in her life, Kaori felt a spark of something she had never known before: freedom. They tried to resist, tried to force her hand, but Kaori stood her ground. She would not be moved. They had underestimated her, underestimated what she could do. The power to resist, to challenge authority, had always been within her. Now, it was time to unleash it. As Kaori was led out of the council chamber, the weight of the world seemed to shift. She wasn't just a warrior anymore. She was something more, something the elders had never anticipated. Kaori and Marcus made their way through the dark, winding corridors beneath the elders' stronghold, every step taken in silence. The weight of what they had just set in motion pressed heavily on Kaori's chest. They had been marked as traitors, and the penalty for treason was death, if they were caught. But she knew something the elders didn't. They weren't just running away. They were building something. Something bigger. Something that could change everything. They reached the docking bay without incident, the security systems temporarily disabled by the sabotage Marcus had initiated. The human was more resourceful than she had first imagined. His skills weren't just those of a soldier, they were those of someone who had survived in places Kaori couldn't even comprehend. The door to the transport ship hissed open in front of them, and she stepped inside, her heart racing. The ship was small, barely enough for 2 people, but it would do. They had to get away, get to the barren moon where they would be left to their exile. "I didn't think you had this in you," Kaori muttered to Marcus as she started the ship's engines. Marcus didn't reply immediately, instead focusing on the controls. "Had to learn quickly. It's not the first time I've had to steal a ship." Kaori raised an eyebrow, glancing at him. "Is that a common thing for humans?" He smirked, his eyes lighting up with a mix of amusement and bitterness. "You'd be surprised how often necessity breeds creativity. Sometimes survival means bending the rules a little." Kaori chuckled, shaking her head. "You're full of surprises." Marcus turned his gaze to the viewport as the ship lifted off the ground. "Not as many as you think. You're the one who broke every rule you were taught." There it was again, the defiance in his voice, the recognition of something beyond mere survival. It made her question everything. Humans weren't just fighters, they were creators. They built, they adapted, and above all, they resisted. She could see it now in Marcus, in the way he had learned to survive not just through force, but through innovation. As the ship broke through the atmosphere and entered space, Kaori adjusted their trajectory, setting course for the barren moon where they would disappear. But she knew it wouldn't be for long. The elders would never let them slip away unnoticed. They would send a fleet after them, send every resource they had to hunt them down. The problem was, Kaori wasn't planning to hide. She wasn't planning to run forever. What had started as an act of defiance had turned into something else entirely: a mission. A rebellion. Marcus leaned back in his seat, his eyes closing for a moment. "You don't think this is the end, do you?" "No," Kaori replied, the word coming easily. "It's just the beginning. The elders think they control everything, our lives, our future, even the rules we live by. But they're wrong. Humans are the key to breaking that control. I've seen it now." "You mean their ability to resist?" Marcus said, his voice thoughtful. "The elders fear that more than anything." Kaori nodded, her mind racing. "It's not just about their strength. It's about their will to fight. Humans will never bow down, and that scares them. You and I are just the beginning. We're the spark. But there's a whole galaxy full of people who feel the same way." Marcus turned toward her, his expression serious. "And you think they'll follow us? After all this?" Kaori's gaze hardened as she stared ahead, feeling the weight of their decision. "They'll have no choice. Once the spark is lit, it spreads. People will join us because they see the truth. The elders' control isn't invincible. It's just fear." Marcus didn't respond at first. He just watched her, his eyes full of something she hadn't expected: trust. It was rare among humans, he told her, but there was something in her now, something she hadn't seen in herself before. Something that made him believe in what she was saying. What's our first move? He asked quietly, his gaze never leaving hers. Kaylee gripped the control panel tightly, a fire in her chest. We find others like us. Others who have seen the cracks in the system. We rally them. And we make sure the elders know they can't control us anymore. Marcus's lips curled into a determined smile. I'm with you. Let's make sure they regret ever thinking they could. Kaylee's pulse quickened, but it wasn't from fear. It was from something else. The certainty that she was no longer just a soldier. She was something more. A leader. A symbol. She had already defied the elders once, but now, she was going to make sure that their entire civilization would feel the weight of their mistake. As the barren moon loomed closer in the viewport, Kaylee set the ship down gently, her mind already turning to what came next. They would be exiled, yes. But they would also be free. Free to build a resistance. Free to show the elders that control through fear was no longer enough. That no matter how hard they tried, the will to resist could never be crushed. Kaylee turned to Marcus, a fierce grin spreading across her face. This is just the beginning. The fight isn't over. It's only getting started. He met her gaze, his expression matching hers, the fire of rebellion already burning in his eyes. Let's make sure they know that. And she wasn't alone. Marcus, the human, stood by her side, his strength and resilience matching hers in ways she never imagined. They would fight. They would resist. And together they would bring down the walls the elders had built around them. The future was uncertain. But Kaylee no longer cared. The law was broken. The rebellion had begun.